The Johnson & Johnson pause will continue for at least another week or so. A landmark moment for cryptocurrency as Coinbase goes public and Americans consider the worst place in the country to be. Thursday Need to Know. Let's go. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for Thursday, April 15th. I am Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. That's some tease, Carlo.
Oh, I think I know the answer, though. We were going to do that story yesterday, and we ran out of time. How you doing, Jill? How are things over at HQ?
Looking around, still just me here. Although I've heard that there are a couple of people upstairs on 26. So perhaps the office starting to come back to life slowly.
We'll see. I think it'll still probably be a couple of months. Before we get going, I have a plug today. I want to talk about masks for a second. So remember the other day when we were doing Love, Hate, 8 and I was complaining about mask breath? So get this. We actually have a listener who works at a company that saw this problem, I guess, and they created a mask for this exact issue. So Chase from Inherent, he sent me a couple of these masks that they make. They're they use some sort of like silver. I don't really get it, but anyway, it's an antibacterial mask that reduces odor. So I got them yesterday, and I was wearing mine on my walk yesterday. And I gotta say, and I haven't been paid for this. It is a good mask, really breathable. It looks good, and it doesn't smell. I gotta be honest. So anyway. Chase told me to tell everybody that our listeners can get 15% off of those masks if they so choose, if they use the code N2K. The website is inherent.tech. Inherent.tech. And you can check out those masks if you wish.
Love it. Okay, cool.
I've got one for you. I'll mail it to you, I guess.
Isn't that so sad? I feel like we're so close, but so far.
I know.
All right, let's get to some news here. The CDC's advisory panel now asking for more time to look at the possible link between the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and a rare but serious blood clotting disorder, meaning that the pause on the J&J shot's going to continue for now. Some countries that have been giving the shot are already reporting that this pause has added to skepticism about the vaccines and a sense that between Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca, developed countries are just dumping second-rate vaccines on poorer nations. In the East African nation of Malawi, one doctor telling the New York Times that people have been asking, how do we get rid of the vaccine in our body? Oy.
Not good. Yeah. Something I think that could have been predicted. But that's really important, Jill, and that's a really good piece in the New York Times this morning that talks about this. It's not just the United States, right? It's these other countries that are depending on these vaccines, especially these one-shot vaccines like J&J and Astra, just because of how easy they are to make and transport. And the pandemic isn't going to be over until it's over everywhere. So that is really an important point. I just want to mention a poll that came out. You know I love polls, right? This is from Monmouth University, a national poll about vaccines. So look at this. When do Americans plan to get the COVID vaccine? 51% already got it. That number was 16% in March, so that's great. 14% say as soon as it's allowed. That was 38% in March. Obviously, that makes sense. 12% are waiting to see. That was 21% in March. 21% say they likely never will. That was 24% in March. So it's a little better, actually. We're talking a lot about hesitancy, and it's a problem, but it is getting a little bit better for now, at least. But look at this. They did a crosstab by political affiliation. The people who say that they will likely never get the vaccine, 43% of Republicans. That was 36% in March. 22% of independents. That was 31% in March. And basically the same, 5% of Democrats.
Is that the Tucker Carlson effect? I don't know.
It might be. I mean, it really is. I mean, he should be ashamed of himself. And I know that he sleeps on a pile of money every night and probably doesn't think too much about
and
this.
And he's probably been vaccinated, by the way.
Oh, I'm sure he is. I guaranteed. No question about it.
As was Rupert Murdoch, his boss.
Yeah, he was like the first to get it.
By the way, so that panel reconvenes in about 10 days or so. They're going to look over additional data, mostly from people who've received the vaccine in the past few days. In the meantime, though, cases still out of control in parts of this country. Michigan right now hitting all-time highs. including when it comes to kids. It's something I've been talking about a bit here on the podcast. This new variant seems to be impacting children more than the previous ones. 45 children hospitalized Tuesday with either confirmed or suspected cases of COVID-19, according to data from Michigan.
Yeah, it's definitely worrying. I think I hit the cycle this week in terms of just upsetting people from like every walk of life, which is okay, man. It's all right. It's okay. Like that's what I've purposely been trying to be provocative the last few days.
Really? Is that what we need here on the Need2Know podcast?
No, I think it is a little bit, because still these are conversations that they're not really happening anywhere in the media, but they're happening in life, right? These are conversations that I've just been having, in my everyday life. I'm sure other people have too. So I'm really happy that we're able to have them on this podcast, because I don't see other people doing this in the media. And we should be able to talk about this stuff, right? I mean, we're all figuring this out together. Like there's literally no one on earth who knows, like this is everybody's first panini, right?
Panini is what? Is this panini pandemic. You say for pandemic?
None of us have been through a panini before. So I'm just saying, like, I understand people get upset, and I'm saying some things that are really meant to get us thinking about what things are going to look like in a couple weeks, a couple months, and if this thing actually does become sort of an endemic virus that we have to deal with forever. And there still are a lot of reasons to be optimistic in the short term. We're going to hit 200 million vaccine doses, if not tomorrow, probably this weekend. You talked about Michigan, and it's very worrying there, and obviously things could change, but the trends elsewhere in the country more or less are favorable. Just one sort of thing that I've been looking at, I really want to see deaths come to 250 a day or less. I think that that's an important marker. We're currently at about 650 deaths a day on the 7-day average. I looked into this yesterday, 220 deaths a day. That was like the worst average for the worst flu season. So just to give you some context, I think that when we have sustained daily deaths at a level of a bad flu season, I think that we can adjust some of our thinking about this. I'm not saying I'm going to go lick the subway poles. I know what you're saying. But
no kissing on the subway. Not only for your health, just for the other passengers not to puke.
Exactly.
No offense to you and whomever you would be kissing.
That's okay. Well, speaking of who I would be kissing, I do want to mention one other thing before we go on, because a couple of people wrote in and they made a point that I was being hypocritical in talking about how I thought people were being selfish in not getting the vaccine, when I noted that my own wife hasn't gotten the vaccine. So I just want to be clear about something. We made the decision that because there were no pregnant women in these clinical studies, and because Becky is basically working from home and not out in the world and far along in her pregnancy, that it's better to just wait at this point. That by no means is an indication that she or me or our family is hesitant about the vaccine itself. Does that make sense?
I'm glad you said that, because as you mentioned, a couple people wrote in, and I thought, when I have to admit, when you were going on one of your vaccine rants, I kind of thought, because I have a bunch of pregnant friends right now, and to a person, they all have been vaccinated. All of their doctors unequivocally have said the risk of getting COVID while pregnant is so much worse than any sort of risk you would have from possibly getting the vaccine.
Sure.
And so I had thought similarly. So I'm glad you're addressing it. And I agree. I mean, I think, I think it's complicated for certain demographics. Like if you're pregnant, it's a tough thing. But I don't know if I agree with you about the deaths. I think that that's an important level, that 250, and I get what you're saying. But I don't think deaths tell the full story when it comes to COVID, because of all of these long haulers. So death is not, obviously that's the worst case scenario, but you're talking about millions of people right now who are living with conditions from COVID months later. So I feel like that's what also makes this virus so different from the flu.
No, it does. And I'm not trying to be one of those people who are like, oh, it's just the flu. Like, it's obviously way worse than the flu. We know this by now. We don't have to go over that. I'm just trying to give a little bit of we have to set some milestones here. We have to set some markers. Otherwise, we're going to be making progress, and people aren't going to feel that progress, and then it's going to be like, well, what's the point? What's the point of any of this, right? So I just want to say, look, we are making progress. That progress could be, it could reverse, right? We don't know, but generally speaking, things are still going in the right direction here, and I just want to sort of be clear about that. But I don't mean to take away from what you're saying about the long haulers. That stuff scares me.
No, and I agree with you. And like what I was saying yesterday about how my life has not dramatically changed post-vaccination, or will not once I'm fully there. My daughter, as I mentioned, was sick, and we were waiting for a PCR test to come in a couple days ago. I brought her over to my parents' house on Sunday. And she was with my parents, who were not wearing a mask or fully vaccinated. And you know what? I didn't have a pit in my stomach that that my daughter gave my parents COVID because we were there. It was like, okay, and I look, my parents have we see them all the time now. My daughter, obviously loves them, but just goes there all the time. Life has changed in many ways post-vaccine.
No, I know that we're going to move on. I just want to make one other point, because yesterday I was talking we could do this all day, Jill. I was being provocative, talking about how I was like, my life is going to go back to normal 2 weeks after I get vaccinated. That doesn't mean I'm not going to go to like an underground warehouse party. I mean, I wouldn't be doing that anyway. So not to have it.
Is that your life?
But you know what I mean? No, it used to be. But what I mean, here's a great example, right? I haven't eaten in an indoor restaurant in the last however long year and change, right? That to me is just an example of something that is not worth the risk. We know that that's where this thing spreads. You're inside, you're talking, you're laughing. So when we're vaccinated, that's something that I will do again. I will go sit inside a restaurant. So those are the sorts of changes that I think that we can start to talk about, right?
All right, now one more thing. No, I'm just kidding. All right, let's really switch gears here and talk about what's going on in Minneapolis. Kim Potter, the former Minnesota police officer who shot Dante Wright during a traffic stop, apparently by mistake, has been arrested and charged with second-degree manslaughter. Potter posted bond. She's going to be arraigned today. Protests, though, continued for a fourth night in Brooklyn Center, with police using flash grenades to disperse the crowd, some of whom were throwing bottles of water and milk at law enforcement officers who were standing behind concrete barriers. And for a little color here, they were scrawled with graffiti that says, Murderopolis.
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 Yeah, that's sort of the new tagline, I guess.
I'm laughing because I had trouble with the pronouncer even before while we were reading through.
That's okay.
I still don't get it.
Really wild scenes, though. It looks just National Guard, barriers up. Something that we've seen in many cities now in this country over the last year or so. Over at the Chauvin trial across town, Derek Chauvin's defense team opened their case that called a former medical examiner from Maryland who testified that he believed George Floyd died of a combination of a pre-existing heart condition, drug use, and exposure to the carbon monoxide from the tailpipe of the police car that he was next to as Chauvin kneeled on his neck. I don't know how the jurors are going to react to that, but that is sort of the case that the defense is putting on. They could wrap their case as early as today. And if Chauvin were to take the stand, that would happen today. I'd say the chances of that are roughly zero, but we'll see.
Back to Kim Potter, a lot of those protesters saying that she should have been charged with murder, not manslaughter. So there was a lot of disappointment. One legal analyst, though, Sunny Hostin from The View, she says this case is textbook manslaughter, because for a murder charge, the prosecution would have to prove intent to kill. And in this case, Potter thought that she was firing her taser, not her actual gun. However reckless and inexplainable that is, and how, just whatever you may think of that, the body cam video does seem to back that up. So so Hostin was saying, the prosecution probably wouldn't be able to get a guilty verdict on murder.
She would beat a murder charge, no question.
Bernie Madoff has died. The New York financier who ran the largest Ponzi scheme in history that defrauded thousands of investors out of a total of $65 billion died of natural causes in federal prison in North Carolina. He was 82 years old. Madoff was serving a 150-year sentence for that fraud, which came to light when his investors started to pull money out while the financial markets were crashing in the fall of 2008. Victims included, among others, the late writer and Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel, and other Jewish charities and Holocaust
Yeah.
charities. Just, I was going to say
Kevin Bacon
criminal, but
also.
I think it's clear. What?
I think Kevin Bacon, didn't he lose a lot of money in Madoff? I'll check in on that. I thought that I sort of remembered that. Everything about the whole Madoff story is just so sad to me. Both of his sons died while he was serving in prison, one from suicide and one from cancer. I'm not trying to make him into this anything other than a criminal, of course, but it's just the whole thing was very sad. His family's always maintained that they were not aware of the Ponzi scheme. A lot of folks never believe that to this day. But do you remember this story? I mean, were you covering it?
Yes, of course.
This was huge.
I was a reporter on Long Island when this broke, actually, and
so this was right in your wheelhouse. Yeah.
I interviewed many people who were out a lot of money because of him.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't even believe the numbers they were talking about when the story came to light. It's interesting in retrospect, though, because Madoff, he became sort of this stand-in for the bankers that really tanked the economy back then. And in my view, that ended up sort of giving people a lot of cover because, Madoff is more or less the only person who went to jail for the financial crisis. And he obviously was a major criminal, but his fraud, pretty small potatoes in comparison to a lot of the other stuff that was happening around then, from the mortgage-backed securities to the credit default swaps, the predatory lending that sort of begat that crisis. So I always sort of felt like he got hit as being like this monster, which he was, but as this person who tanked the economy, and there were a lot of other people who skated from that. But by the way, if you're just not familiar, if you're younger and you're not familiar with the story, HBO had a great movie about this with Robert De Niro playing Bernie Madoff. It was called Wizard of Lies. Mm-hmm. It's probably on HBO Max a couple of years ago, but you should check that out.
What was I going to say? A lot of this also pointed to the SEC and to the dysfunction and how they didn't figure this out. I mean, because this was going on for years and years. And I'm going to give a little shout out. I hope this is okay, actually. My father-in-law is an accountant. And one of his clients many, many years ago was thinking of investing with Madoff. And my father-in-law met with Madoff's team. And he figured out right away that the numbers didn't add up. He's like,
really?
Do not invest in this. Something is off.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so shout out to Jay.
I mean, not to say that that's not amazing, but if this guy was making money when the stock market was going down. It's it doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure out that something might be up here, right?
Right, but what happens is it's that pack mentality, right? Like you get one person, so and so is invested with them. And it was just this elite thing where you wanted to get your money in with Madoff, and you probably weren't going to do the due diligence to make sure that it was legit. But I credit to my father-in-law.
Yeah.
I was highly impressed.
Absolutely.
Okay, in this landmark moment, switching gears here to talk a little bit about the current market. It is a landmark moment for the cryptocurrency space. The crypto exchange Coinbase went public in a direct listing on the NASDAQ yesterday. This was a big debut. Carlo, we briefly mentioned this on the pod yesterday. Shares soared as high as $425 before closing lower at $328, giving the company a valuation of $86 billion by the day's end. Unlike a lot of startups that go public, Coinbase actually is profitable, but its business model is directly tied to the price of Bitcoin, which is extremely volatile, but has been surging to new highs lately. The price right now about $63K, which is still wild, even though it's down a bit from yesterday's high. Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, who's now one of the 100 richest people on the planet, he started the company when Bitcoin was worth $6.
Yeah, not a bad day for him. Eventually, Jill, we're going to have a conversation, not just on this podcast, but a national conversation about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency's impact on the climate. Bitcoin has a gigantic carbon footprint. This is from David Walls-Wells, who is a really good writer on climate change. Bitcoin mining uses the Bitcoin mining, which is the process at which the blockchain is built, I guess. I don't even really understand it entirely. But that process uses somewhere between 25 and 50% of all of the electricity that we produce via solar panels in this world. Just think about that. So as much as half of the gains that we've made in terms of solar energy wiped out just by the process of mining Bitcoin. And for what exactly? I mean, the people who are making money off crypto right now and I'm going to get heat for this too, but it's true. They're basically either speculators or criminals. Bitcoin doesn't really have an intrinsic value, at least not yet. And maybe it will, and I'll be proven wrong. It'll be the greatest thing since sliced bread. I don't know. But in the meantime, what it is doing is making a lot of people very rich at the expense of the planet and reversing some of the really small but precious gains that we have been finally making on renewable energy.
I did not realize that, Carlo, about
Yeah.
the carbon footprint. That's pretty fascinating.
It's something we got to deal with.
Instagram launching a feature that lets users decide whether they want to hide likes, whether it's their own posts or someone else's. Instagram had been testing a feature that automatically hid likes as a way to see if it cut down on the pressure to post popular content. The Facebook-owned platform saying the reaction to the test was mixed, so now they want to see how users react to being given the option to see their likes.
I never bought that when they said that they were going to default to hiding likes. It's like that's the currency of social media, right? I don't know. It always seemed like they were just sort of saying that for PR.
Look, I think that's probably a healthier relationship with social media in general. I feel like I remember many years ago putting up a post, not getting a lot of likes right away, and then taking it down. And thinking, what is wrong with me in my life right now? Like, I need to reassess things.
It's so true. It's so meaningless. It's like, if you're younger and you're listening, it is not your life. It really isn't. It is like if you don't get a lot of likes on a post, it could not mean less in the scheme of things.
Okay, and finally, actually, no, we have two more items. Americans considering Hawaii to be the best place in the United States and Washington, D.C. to be the worst, according to this new survey by YouGov. The survey asked people to choose between states in head-to-head matchups. Hawaii won 69% of its matchups for the top ranking, followed by Colorado and Virginia. D.C. came in dead last with 35%, a 35% win percentage behind Alabama and Mississippi, and New Jersey as well. Well, I don't think D.C. is so bad.
It's not so bad. And, New Jersey really gets a bad rap, doesn't it? I mean, it's funny because New Jersey has some of the highest real estate prices in the country. And
the Jersey Shore. I mean, it's not all fine, like man. Jersey Shore, the MTV reality show. It's beautiful.
Yeah, no. It is beautiful. Jersey's a great town, a great state. I feel like by the way, New York in this poll ranking 8th between Arizona and Georgia. I don't know about that.
I know.
I feel like we're a little bit higher than that.
And finally, just in time for what's already expected to be a wild summer, White Claw introducing a new line of hard seltzers that have a higher alcohol content. It's called White Claw Surge. It bumps up the booze level from 5% to 8%, and it also comes in a larger 16-ounce can in 2 flavors, blood orange and cranberry. What could possibly go wrong here, Carlo?
That's exactly what I was thinking. Do you remember Four Loko? Does anyone else remember the Four Loko craze? It was basically one of these things, only it had a higher alcohol content and it had caffeine. So it was basically like speed. And it was somehow legal for like a minute, like a summer about 10 years ago, and it was crazy. I mean, I don't even want to go into it because I'll probably get in trouble. But we would drink this stuff, and I remember thinking to myself, like, how is this street legal? It's crazy.
Right. I never drank it because I feel like I don't like carbonation and stuff, but I do briefly remember this. Okay. What?
You were a White Claw person, no?
No.
Oh, okay. It's good.
I'm a wine person.
Yeah.
Both
Kill
the
wine,
act of whining and the drink. That is what you need to know for Thursday, April 15th.
Tomorrow.